Hi, I'm Rick Elliott. It's 8 p.m. and it's Monday. That means it's time for us to be okay. So in the fourth grade, you're about 8 years old, or at least I was. I was a summer baby, so I started school earlier than some of my other counterparts did, earlier age. I went to a new school in a new district when I was in the fourth grade, and I really loved it. The principal was a black man. That was awesome. This was in the early 90s, and there was a really great cultural surge that was going on in those days. And there was just a great sense of community around me. I became a public speaker because the principal's wife just fell in love with me. She was completely enamored with me. She used to take me around and talk about me like I was her own son. And she asked me to speak at her church. That was the first speaking engagement that I ever got, and it was Black History Month, and my topic was, what shall we overcome? And I talked about the civil rights struggle. I talked about black people, and it was wonderful, and it really spawned an entire speaking career for me on a speaking circuit at the local level. I also traveled to Dallas, Texas, I believe in St. Louis, Missouri. I traveled some other places with the opportunity to speak or perform. I had my own television show on public access for a while. All of this happened because of Ms. Brown. Mrs. Brown was the one who encouraged me. Now, in this community, there was also another gentleman who became a mentor to me. We did become fast friends. He took me under his wing as a little brother. He was in the arts. I was in the arts. Prior to my speaking, I was always involved in theater, theatrical productions. I recited and orated poetry and prose of my own and by other authors as well. And this person, this guy, came into my life as a community advocate. He worked in the community system, in the school system, the church system, and did a lot of good work for those different entities. As our relationship grew closer together, he adopted me in a program that's called the Big Brothers Big Sisters program as my big brother. This allowed us to have access to other types of events and activities that we didn't have to pay for, that we could do with other kids, like going horseback riding, going to a farm, seeing the farm animals, things of that nature. And it was great because it allowed me access as the son of a single mother and an only child. It allowed me access to places and some events and activities that I hadn't experienced before and may not have been able to experience with just my mother doing what she could to put me in positive programming. So this person, this gentleman, comes into my life, and it's a breath of fresh air. He was a big brother figure to me, something that I had never experienced before. I would sleep over at his house on the weekends, and we have water gun fights, and then we go out of town, maybe to his parents' house or to one of the trips with the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. And it was a great, strong relationship. It was something that was welcome, being that I was in a single parent family. My father wasn't there, and I didn't have any. I had my grandfather, but he was not my father. That was my grandfather. And there's a difference with the type of influence that a grandparent has versus your parent. So my grandfather was in my life, yes, and he that's my guy. That was my guy. But this guy came into my life. We had a good time. Now, there was a change. At some point, this person that I knew, this person that I had developed a relationship, this big brother, became something else. Almost a monster, a terrorist. As the relationship grew, again, I stayed at his home overnight, spent the night, things of that nature. And one night, everything changed and went south. hour. We were playing around, horse playing, wrestling, and to be as candid as possible, he began moving in a way that I was unfamiliar with. As far as sex goes, I was not having sex, or no, I didn't know anything about sex and really the birds and the bees and things like that you hear about in television and movies. I was sexually ignorant, which is good. I mean, I don't have a problem with that at that age. So I didn't know, I say that to say that I didn't know really what sex was, what it meant, what sexual actions are, what foreplay and actions beyond that entail. As a result of this, it seemed as though this person who I knew was someone different. I wasn't that night. He became someone different. He wasn't my friend. He wasn't my big brother. And as a matter of fact, as I said, a terrorist. There was a pressure that was put on me to do certain things that night, new things that night. And so here I am with someone that I trust, someone with whom I trust my very life. Here I am focusing on the fun and games, and there's something else in mind that's going on with him. I ultimately was not able to stand up in that point. I had no advocate, and I wasn't able to advocate for myself. My mother wasn't there, my protector wasn't there, and I didn't know how to protect myself in that situation. The relationship with this gentleman continued for a number of years. Thusly, the molestation that I experienced at his hand continued as well. Now, right basically in the nearing the end of the relationship with this guy, a father figure, someone older than me, someone older than him, while on parole from jail and staying at my mother's house with she and I, he raped me. The things that I experienced that night were similar to the molestation that I had been experiencing from age 8 to 13. So here now at 13, pretty confused about a lot of things. Confused on what my life and my childhood, not just my life, but what my childhood was and what it entailed and how I could move forward in a positive direction. That night happened, and it reminded me of some of the things that have been happening for a number of years. And for me, there comes a place of blackout when you are in a molestation, a rape, a sexual situation that is foreign to you. There comes a place of blackout where you resolve yourself to give in to the situation. You hear stories like this when people are attacked forcefully, if they are held at gunpoint, in situations where persons are terrorized, victimized in some sort. You kind of just zone out, and what is going on is happening to you, but you're unable to be present enough to feel it. There is an escape mechanism that sets in as defense when you're abused. Now, that defense mechanism doesn't just happen in the moments when the abuse is happening, when it's going on. the defense mechanism sets inside yourself. At 13, when this father figure aggressed me and did what he did, violated me, I had no defense system that was I had not developed that sense of defense for myself, that sense of protection for myself. So I wasn't able to advocate for myself. My advocate is gone. My protector is gone. The molestation, the rape was one night. It was a one-night experience that left me more confused than the beginning of the molestation. The molestation, when it happened at age 8, was mentally so confusing that the next day and days after, I almost questioned if it really happened, or if it was real. There was something that was so difficult to take in, because I never thought that that guy would hurt me. Never thought that that father figure would hurt me. Never thought that I would be left without my advocate and protector. Now, as I said, at age 15, when my mother passed, something in me died a little also, and was lost. So, as we come to terms with the things that we experience, so that we can be okay. Being okay with abuse is learning the power of forgiveness. After age 15, there are other situations, acquaintances, and relationships that I became a part of that were toxic and abuseful. There were other times of molestation by other individuals. And though I was older, in my teenage years, my late teenage years, my early 20s, I still didn't have that power to show up for myself. If I could talk to my younger self, when people ask you that question, what would you say to your younger self? I would tell myself to show up, speak your mind, stand on your own, stand in what you know to be true. And if you don't know, ask. My past, the abuse that I suffered, put me in a place where I closed. I became introverted, deathly introverted, to a fault that I was unable to open up to anyone. I was unable to share or speak my truth to anyone for years. Today, that truth involves me being HIV positive, undetectable, which means that when you are undetectable, you are unable to transmit the virus to another person. The abuse that I suffered for those years didn't break me. That's what a survivor is. Not just living through abuse, coming out of it with a strength. And the strength is the power of forgiveness. Many times when we're abused, be it sexual, mental, verbal abuse, the victim tends to blame themselves. It's my fault because I stayed. It's my fault because I wasn't good enough. It's my fault because I wasn't able to provide. And the truth of the matter, it's not your fault. That's why it's victim. And for every victim, there is a victimizer. Someone who has taken advantage, someone who has manipulated, someone who has stolen your trust and gone away with it, gone away with your heart, gone away with your time, gone away with your money. Victim. The power and freedom from victimization and suffering through abuse is forgiveness. The first step is forgiving your own self. It's not your fault that you stayed in an abusive relationship. It's not your fault that someone touched you, that someone violated you, that someone went against what was appropriate in relationship. Inappropriate relationships, unkind friendships. Those things aren't your fault, and you can't judge yourself on them. You can't judge yourself and stop in a place where you ruminate on the victimization, the trauma, the abuse that you incurred. Forgive yourself. Tell yourself, it's okay that this happened. It's okay. There it is again. My favorite phrase. It happened, but what is the longer term situation? What is the bigger picture? What do we gain from what happened? I remind you that, again, with experiencing abuse, there is a level of forgiveness that has to happen first for yourself and then for your abuser. In last week's episode, I talked about people being hurt. A common phrase is that hurt people hurt people. Oftentimes, people who perpetuate abuse, or who enact abuse, rather, are perpetuating a lifestyle that they've learned from somewhere else, be it a parent, a friend, or family member. They were abused in some way. Someone talked down to them. Someone touched them. And here they are in this place of loss. And they don't know how to, they haven't dealt with it. That's really what the truth is. People who abuse and perpetuate what's been done to them have unresolved issues and trauma within themselves. So as we move forward, so that we can be okay with abuse, remember, forgive yourself. And then, though it is a process and it is a journey, you must forgive your abuser. Yes, the abuse that you suffered was not right, and you are not worthy of it. But the abuser is suffering just as much, if not more than you. Forgiving the abuser brings you peace, and it gives you the power in the situation. It gives you back the power that was taken from you when that person spoke ill of you, the first time they hit you, the first time they touched you inappropriately. You regain your power by learning to forgive. Forgive yourself. Tell yourself you look good. Tell yourself that I am not that person. I am not the person who went through those years of being beaten, those years of being taken advantage of. It's okay. Let's get to the bigger picture so that we can be okay. The it's okay applies to how much of the situation you went through. The be okay applies to what you get out of what you went through. You went through the situation. That's part of the journey, and it's okay. Now, in order to be okay, you have to make a choice, a specific and intentional decision that I will not repeat and rehearse victimization within myself, but I will move forward and take power over the situation, power over the victimizer. Be okay with abuse. Be okay. Thank you for tuning in. I love you. I appreciate you. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your comments, your feedback. Tag a friend. Tell them about this message. Tell me about your story. There's so many stories out there that just haven't been told, and yours is one of them. Thank you, and good night.